Bad Batch Season 3, Episode 9. We are coming off last week's very filler episode. Almost nothing happened at all. They met up with Fennec and they got information. Well, not really. They got no information from Fennec about the M-count thing, which is midichlorians, which the Bad Batch seems afraid to say, but that's basically the information they were trying to get about the whole Omega thing and Tantus, and we got nothing from it. There's a whole filler episode for serving Fennec's little side mission of a bounty, and I forgot about the whole episode. Like, I don't even, like, there was like a bug guy and they went to go get him and stuff, and they contacted Ventress at the end. That was really it. So, because they contacted Asajj Ventress, which we knew was coming in Season 3 because of the trailer, she was literally in it, they contact her at the end of the episode, and of course she's going to be coming in this episode. So, the episode starts out, they're back on that island again. Omega's out with the stupid dog Alien, and it starts barking, or whatever it does, in a cave there on the island. So Omega goes to investigate, and she runs across a ship hidden away in a cave, and immediately she turns around and there's Asajj Ventress. So they didn't waste any time. There's Ventress, and they immediately, you're like, oh, what the hell's going to happen here with the Ventress? Well, here's the thing with Ventress. In the Clone Wars, she started to have like a turn in her story. She wasn't necessarily that bad. She's like on her own, doing her own stuff. She's not really bad anymore. She's not serving the Separatists. She's not a Sith assassin anymore. She was doing like bounty stuff. So it's like, okay, well, what are we going to see with Asajj in this? Now, there is a book with Asajj Ventress, and apparently she died. And it happened, after we saw her in the Clone Wars. It was a story after, what we saw of her in the Clone Wars, and she's supposed to be dead by now, from what I hear. I have not read that book. I don't know what happens in that book, but what I do know is that she died. So she's not dead now, and that is a retcon, from what I understand. So Dave Filoni is, again, doing another, just retconning another book, because why not, right? So it really just seems that they don't really care about their books that they're doing. I mean, whatever. But apparently she died in a book, and now she's alive again. She's been resurrected. So she wasn't really resurrected. She's just here now. So the Bad Batch, they confront Ventress with Omega. She doesn't really capture Omega. She's not really there to capture Omega, and she's actually there to bring the intel that Fennec was going to get for them. So Fennec did come through and get the intel, but they left it for this episode because they needed to bring in Ventress, because they don't have any characters left to just drag in from the Clone Wars to get you excited. So Ventress, she starts to talk to them about the M-count stuff. And once they, she asks, like, who is it for? And they lie for a moment, saying, oh, it's a friend of theirs that, the Empire's interested in, and, they're after her now, and we don't really understand what M-count means. And look, they do say it once in a few moments, but this show is incredibly terrified on saying the word midichlorian, and I don't know how much they're really going to say it going forward, except for maybe a few times. It's weird. And I've heard multiple people now mention it. It's like, it is a good point. Like, this show very much does not want to say midichlorian. And it's like the same with The Mandalorian, where they were saying M-count as well. Like, they don't want to do that. They think that would be... It's funny to me how Disney thinks, oh, we got to stray away from that controversy. Oh, we don't want to say midichlorian. That was such a terrible, awful thing that happened in the prequels that George Lucas did. And we would totally never want to have a controversy in our Star Wars content. God, thank God we're avoiding that one. Meanwhile, you are Disney Star Wars. I'm just saying, man. I don't think it's the biggest issue these days. But midichlorians are a big topic in this show for sure, and the cloning and all that stuff with Palpatine now. So they're doing that. But then she starts to talk about it. She's going to tell them what she knows about it. She knows quite a bit about the midichlorians, so she says everyone has it, which is true, but at varying levels. She goes on to say that ones who have a higher M count are believed to be more capable of wielding the Force. This is all something we know. So, look, this is more just the Bad Batch coming in to discover what's going on here, what this all means, because this is stuff we all know. We've known this for a while now, but we finally running into someone now that actually knows what the hell this stuff is about. So this is the moment where, she's about to walk off. She tells him the intel, and she's like, okay, I'm going to go now. And then Omega's like, oh shit, am I Force sensitive? Am I a Jedi? Of course she will be. But she turns around, and then this is finally when Ventress says the word. So she says, I can't determine your midichlorian levels without testing you. So Omega was asking, like, what am I? Am I a Jedi? Can I do the Force? And she says she will not know unless she's actually fully tested, which I guess that makes sense. But she does say the word midichlorian right there. That's it. That's the only time they say it. And I got a weird feeling they're not going to say it all too much more. I just don't. It's just silly. But that's the way it is. They're just going to say M count. That's their term. And that's what they want to do in these. So, but yeah, she does say it to Omega, and she sticks around to start to test Omega a little bit, train her a little bit. So right away, here we are. Like, look, people have been wondering, oh God, is Omega Force sensitive? All that stuff going on this whole entire show. It's like, yeah, of course she is. You know, the first female clone ever of Jango Fett, of course, which is weird to begin with. It's a female clone of Jango Fett. Of course, the first female one ever is Force sensitive. That's some good Disney work right there. But the Bad Batch quickly figure out who this person is, and that is Asajj Ventress. Assuming they just never really interacted with her, but they know the name, they know who she is, they've heard of her, and she was a Sith assassin. So immediately the tensions are high. She realizes that something's going on in the background. She sends Omega off to go do a test. Meanwhile, she confronts the Bad Batch, or the Bad Batch confront her, really. So Omega's off on her test, and the confrontation begins, and it's more about the Bad Batch want her to get away from Omega now because they now know who she totally, truly, at least was. The tensions start to rise. So they get in they start to fight a little bit, but Asajj pulls their weapons away with the Force. They start to enter this cool little, hand-on-hand combat thing for a little while, which is kind of cool to see. The Bad Batch is not going to, hold up against Asajj Ventress. It's quite obvious that that's not going to happen. So she does beat them quite easily. They get their weapons back, and then she does pull out her lightsaber while they're blasting at her. And she has a yellow lightsaber. We saw this in the trailers already, nothing new, but like Disney really loves those yellow lightsabers. I will say that. So she has a yellow lightsaber now. It's not the red sabers that we're used to with Asajj. She has a yellow lightsaber now, and that is the one she uses in this episode. So that is her new saber for this. And she beats the Bad Batch quite easily. Omega returns. She completes her little task, random bullshit task that Asajj made up to get her out of the area. She comes back, and Asajj essentially just gives up. She stops and says, I'm not your enemy. The Empire is more powerful and a bigger threat than you could ever imagine. And they kind of come to an understanding there at the very end there that, like, I'm not your enemy. The Empire is the bigger issue here. And she essentially just decides to stick around. And the next day, her and Omega meet up without the Bad Batch there. And they're going to do a little bit more training and stuff. So they go out on a boat onto some water. And Omega's doing some Force training now. Because, of course, she is. Then she can't do it, so Asajj stands up and she does some animal Force stuff because that's the only thing Force users can do now to show off their powers is to connect with some animals. So she does that with some creatures in the water. Accidentally, she summons a big, massive creature, a Bad Batch specialty. Of course, with every episode. Last week we had big alligators. This week we have a big sea monster. What will next week give us? Wait and find out. They fight the creature. It gets Asajj, and she Force connects with the big creature to stop it. So she touches it, and it's like, oh shit! You have the Force. I won't hurt you anymore. So they get away from the creature, and they get aboard the ship. And the episode ends with almost like a little bit of a moment of like, okay, maybe Omega isn't Force sensitive. Omega straight up asks Asajj, like, okay, well, how did the training go? Can you tell if I am Force sensitive or not? Do I have a high M count? And dude, Asajj straight up says, no, you don't. Go. We're not going to continue this. There could be maybe other reasons why the Empire's after you, but no, you don't have a high M count. Omega walks off, and Crosshair says, yeah, you're lying. And essentially it comes down to the point of she's lying most likely, and Omega is going to be force sensitive. They just didn't do much training at all. I'm so glad we didn't just get to randomly see Omega move some shit on the first episode of finding out that she might have the Force or potential for the Force. Shout out to Sabine Wren, who can do everything now. She does warn them after, Omega walks away that the Empire will not stop coming for them, especially with how important she is. And if she does have a high M count, and if she does have this potential, she is a massive threat or a massive target for the Empire, and they will be coming for her. And she even tells them that maybe you should get out of here. This area that you hide out in, this island, maybe you should get out of here because the Empire will be coming for you. And then she goes off on her own very way. And that's how the episode really ends. And a lot of people are going to love this episode. They're going to love it. The few people who do watch it, of course, because I don't think many people are watching The Bad Batch. The few people who do watch this episode, I think, are going to really like it because it's a Clone Wars character making a cameo. And yay. Another Clone Wars character. I'm reaching that point. I'm beyond cameos making me excited. It's cool to see Asajj Ventress. Like, I had no issues with her in the episodes. Like, yeah, there's Asajj. She sounds like Asajj. She looks like Asajj. But the episode wasn't great. It was very basic. It was very, great. Now we're doing the Force shit with Omega, which is something I expected for so long now, because the first female clone will, of course, be Force sensitive. That's how it's going to go here. So, look, The Bad Batch, I'm looking to see how it ends. I've mentioned many times, the only character I really care to see their story is Crosshair. Like, he's the only interesting one there at this point. And, I'm just waiting to see what happens with him at the very end. Maybe he's just with his brothers now, and that's just how it's going to be. But Crosshair is the only really interesting one left for me. This episode was basically just another echo of the Clone Wars. It's like, oh, there's Asajj. She's cool, right? Remember her? The cool Sith assassin from the Clone Wars. But that's about it. She didn't really even do that much in this episode, really. She told them some stuff. She pulled out a lightsaber, used the Force a little bit. Nothing we haven't seen with Asajj Ventress before. And she leaves. And I don't know if we'll even see her again in the show. She doesn't really need to appear again. She really doesn't. So that's the end of the episode. I don't think it was great. We've had better ones this season. I think all the clone ones with Wolf and stuff a few episodes back was much better than this. I think this episode was very basic, very bland. Wasn't that great. But again, I guess it's cool to see Asajj, but it didn't do much for me. The story didn't do much. Yeah, we'll see what happens.